when you look at it, House Republicans have a very narrow margin in one chamber of commerce, and they don't control the White House. There's only so much change you can really make when you only control one half of 1/3 of the branches of government here. So their expectations were just way too high. But when you actually look at what they accomplished, look, the bill cut spending by $1 trillion over 10 years. That's never going to happen. But over the next 2 years that the legislation actually will affect spending, it cuts about $130 billion. That's a real cut. That's a win.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with commentary editor Conn Carroll. So Conn, a lot of conservatives are pretty down on the debt limit bill. I think it was sort of a total capitulation from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The Washington Examiner, though, did an editorial this week that said it should actually be viewed as a win for the GOP. Why is that?
Yeah, I don't see how this is a loss in any way. Look, you were never going to get everything you wanted in the House bill that they passed. It had great stuff in it. The REINS Act, which reined in the administrative state. You had permitting reform, which basically got rid of NEPA and would have made it lots more easy to build things. But, when you look at it, House Republicans have a very narrow margin in one chamber of commerce, and they don't control the White House. There's only so much change you can really make when you only control one half of 1/3 of the branches of government here. So their expectations were just way too high. But when you actually look at what they accomplished, look, the bill cut spending by $1 trillion over 10 years. That's never going to happen. But over the next 2 years that the legislation actually will affect spending, it cuts about $130 billion. That's a real cut. That's a win. And there's also some minor reforms, some tweaks that they made to NEPA, which makes it easier to build things. Did they get all of what they wanted on NEPA? No. But still, they made progress. And so I think when you look at where they were just 5 months ago, when no one knew if Speaker McCarthy was going to survive, when Biden was adamantly saying it was a clean debt limit raise or nothing, that didn't happen. Biden had to eat crow on that. Biden clearly had to work and negotiate and give up meaningful concessions to Republicans in order to raise the debt limit. And that's a win.
You have some members of the House Freedom Caucus talking about the motion to vacate, which was part of the whole speakership fight. Do you think the honeymoon period is over between the conservatives and McCarthy that was sort of had existed since he was made speaker? Or do you think this is just a bump in the road?
I would never have wanted to go on that honeymoon because it was just never that great to begin with. Look, after the 15 ballots, there was a working relationship between McCarthy and the House Freedom Caucus, but there was never love lost in between. They both understand where the other stands, and there's a transactional relationship going on there. And if anything, I think the outcome here, strengthens that. The House Freedom Caucus was able to push legislation in a positive direction. McCarthy kept his promises to them, and I think going forward they know that they still have someone in the leadership's office that's not going to steamroll them, that is going to give them the procedural things they were promised in order to affect legislation in the House.
Drilling down a little bit on that budget deal, one of the things that McCarthy and his allies have touted as a big win in the deal is the work requirements for some forms of welfare. But then when the CBO scored it, it said that it could actually result in more people being on food stamps. How do you square that circle? Yeah,
so I don't think the work requirements were ever a huge get for most of the party. There were some people like Matt Gaetz who they were a big thing. But yes, so in order to get the increases in work requirements for people between 49 and 54, Republicans then also conceded work requirements for homeless people and veterans. And so it's the concession of that larger population, what the CBO cited was a large population of homeless and veterans that then added to the total. But these are all off of complex formulas that the CBO has for who is and who's going to be Medicaid. A lot of people who actually work in the field think that anytime you make it harder and increase the amount of paperwork involved in any type of program, more people will not use it. So we'll see. It's really kind of pocket change to begin with. But I think the bigger win, the bigger takeaway is the movement on permitting reform and the actual cut, $130 billion to spending over the next 2 years. That's a real win for Republicans.
Well, Conn, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Conn and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.